Welcome back, Jason Whitlock, to Please Call Me Crazy. We're happy to have you again. I told you it wouldn't take another 20 episodes, although I think it might have taken another 20 episodes, maybe another 20 exactly. I'm forgetting which episode we last had you, but we're very happy and honored to host you back on the show again. You and I had a very, very good, I would even say great conversation earlier tonight on Fearless. And I thought we could maybe extend that conversation here tonight because your line of country and you were way ahead of your time, especially when it comes to the mainstream sort of sentiment around race and racial idolatry and this sort of, three-card Monty that happens with race conversations. And you've been a spearhead of this conversation. And I've been fortunate enough to come into it with you on Fearless. If you would like to, let's kind of extend the conversation we had earlier tonight about racial idolatry, given the Farrakhan's 90th birthday having passed and him being a very controversial Black leader in America, very tied into some controversial and contentious racial ideas and viewpoints. Talk a little bit about what Minister Louis Farrakhan meant to you growing up. And then let's get into kind of, how he was perceived when you were growing up, how he was perceived by the media when you were growing up, and then we can talk about how that whole thing has come to a head now.
Farrakhan, when I was young, was always viewed as controversial, but not beyond the pale.
Mm,
And America used to value free speech so much that no one was beyond the pale.
mm,
And people with controversial thoughts, people with thoughts and ideas that people found abhorrent, we would still air those thoughts and we would do it uh, courageously and boldly because people weren't afraid of disagreement. People weren't afraid of controversial ideas because there was always a standard of truth that we could lean into, a biblical standard of truth.
mm.
And so, as a country becomes and a society becomes more and more secular, we become afraid of thoughts that we disagree with because there isn't some centralized, agreed upon standard of truth that we can all refer to. And so, Farrakhan was always controversial, but no one had to hide the fact that, yeah, I'd listen to some of what Louis Farrakhan says. No different than in the 50s and 60s. People, hey, yeah, I listened to Malcolm X, and he's a great orator. And, he's welcomed on college campuses to speak to people. And that's where Farrakhan was. He was welcomed on college campuses, he was welcomed on mainstream platforms. And yes, a lot of his thoughts, white people were the devil, and Elijah Muhammad, and how white people were created. People found that silly and stupid and abhorrent. But many of his other thoughts, people thought, hey, this is worth probing, this is worth listening to, this is worth debating. And so you didn't have to be ashamed. You know, Several months ago, I did a show just trying to point out how comfortable we used to be and how we used to not be so fearful. And I aired a bunch of clips of Louis Farrakhan on Phil Donahue's daytime talk show.
I remember
And
that episode.
Phil Donahue was the Oprah Winfrey of his day. Without There would be no Oprah Winfrey without Phil
Yeah.
Donahue.
Yeah. Donahue
And
show was
so,
great.
yeah, housewives, people that worked odd shifts, all consumed Phil Donahue's show. And people like Louis Farrakhan, the Grand Wizard of the KKK, they would come on Phil Donahue's show, and Donahue, a Catholic, would interview them, question them, disagree with them. His audience would, and it wasn't a big deal.
Yeah.
It's in this new America, this very secular America, where we say, "Hey, how dare you platform this person?" And this can't be platform standard You think it's just, oh, well, Louis Farrakhan, he's a racist. Well, next thing you know, it's, hey, the former president, the 45th president of the United States, he's not worthy of a platform.
Yeah.
And eventually, it's going to be all of us that are standing on any biblical values where none of us will be worthy of a platform. And so, my thoughts on Farrakhan when I was a kid growing up was what I was attracted to is just like he constantly talked from a masculine, patriarchal point of view that I found attractive, and he talked about black men living up to their responsibilities as men, and I was attracted to that. The other stuff they bring him on and interview everybody. Hey, you said X, Y, and Z about Jewish people. Most of that stuff, because when I listened to Farrakhan, that's not what I heard,
Mm.
and that's what not the majority of his speeches weren't about that. They were about the black man and what we should do and how we should clean up our behavior. And so I would hear the interviews where you said X, Y, and Z about Jewish folks or whatever. And, not that I'm unsympathetic, but I just like that's not the overall gist of his message. And that's certainly not why I'm here. I'm here because I'm a man. I want to live in a patriarchal society and I want to be held responsible for my behavior.
And I just want to throw this to you after our conversation. I was thinking about how race is used in multiple directions to confuse any ambitious populace in trying to create a better circumstance here in America, right? Especially along racial lines, but as a sort of predicate to confuse the conversation around much broader issues. And I forgot to mention this to you. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but on the conservative side of the movement, many people criticize a Minister Louis Farrakhan as being kind of the railhead of woke black or pro-black grievance politics. When during my time at the center of the uh, you know, George Floyd situation here in Minneapolis, what I found out is that there's this entire new generation of um, black feminism led black feminism led liberal politics within that woke nonprofit activist community that silently reject Minister Louis Farrakhan and Malcolm X. Okay, like and actually, if you get them behind closed doors with other woke liberals, they reject Malcolm X and Minister Louis Farrakhan right out in the open. I don't know if you're familiar with the term Hotep, right? I think
Oh,
this,
yeah.
yeah, no, but they and my point in bringing that up is if the conservatives understood how the modern liberal or woke leftist activist feels about Malcolm X and Minister Louis Farrakhan, truly, not how they post on social media. Everybody likes to post a Malcolm X quote, Malcolm says the most disrespected woman, most disrespected person is the black woman. And that was true, but it wasn't for the reasons why they promoted now. It was because she was hijacked and weaponized and used as a bastion against the black man and the black family, unbeknownst in many ways. So yeah, she was disrespected. And I think Malcolm X knew that, and his ministry continued to try and slowly educate black people to that. He gave it to them in breadcrumbs, right? He didn't try and give it to them all at once because it would be too wounding of their own role in the whole scam. But Minister Louis Farrakhan is the same way. And I just want to try and emphasize that Minister Louis Farrakhan, in my own personal experience, in my adult life, is no longer revered as a hero of Black America. And that's why you didn't hear a crazy outcry when he was banned alongside of Alex Jones. There's this entire new echelon of younger millennial and I don't know what's the next generation after millennials. I forget, but that whole
Z?
Gen Zers, yeah, there's this whole new generation of political activism that was led by boomer activism, boomer academics that says Minister Louis Farrakhan and Malcolm X are bigots and they're misogynists and they're anti-Semitic, and we'll give them a little grace, a little breathing room because they're black men. But outside of that, they're no better than Donald Trump or Alex Jones.
Yeah, I think we need to remember the emasculation of men is universal. and it is most acute among black men. And as you emasculate men and lean into a matriarchal culture, you have to install new heroes and
Mm,
you have to eliminate old masculine heroes.
mm,
And that's why you and I and we are trying to educate black men on, like, hey man, this racial stuff that they got you leaning into, and hey, let's hate the founding fathers. Eventually that's going to include hating our founding fathers, because they were masculine just like their founding fathers. And so what we have are our founding fathers, and there's actually a connection between George Washington and Malcolm X and Martin Luther King and whoever you want to toss in
mm.
there, people with traditional masculine patriarchal values. And so, yeah, are black women at the tip of the spear in terms of emasculating and demonizing Malcolm X, Louis Farrakhan, and making a, hey, Harriet Tubman is actually, and Madam C.J. Walker is actually, and Oprah Winfrey is actually, and Stacey Abrams is actually the change you can believe in. It's, of course they're doing that, and that's again how where we got where I was saying about Louis Farrakhan and racial idolatry. It's a very, very dangerous tool of the devil. It will fill up some church pews for you, but it will eventually lead you astray and away from God and the real solution. And that's what's being done. And so, of course, Louis Farrakhan, Malcolm X, and one day Martin Luther King. I mean, it's already in the process. Martin Luther King cheated on his wife. Martin Luther King like uh, prostitutes. Martin Luther King, you know, they're gonna demonize all heterosexual men, whether black or white. That's the agenda to empower women and the LGBTQ crowd. It's all a very well constructed plot to upend the rulership and upend the patriarchy.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. The emasculation of men in general maybe comes down first and foremost on black men, and let's talk about the way that the narrative is spun because, and I think your show has is probably the most um the most resonating show, the most effective show in highlighting how the black woman has been completely hijacked and used to forward policy that emasculates the entire country, right? And yeah, I think a comedian like Bill Burr is great at this. He talks about how the liberal white woman has kind of hijacked the entire woke movement for herself. And it's all a kind of defiance and rejection of her male counterpart, and it goes back to the oldest division in human history between man and woman, and that really is in a lot of ways at the root of much of the contention in our society, especially here in the West. Why do you think it is that black women fail to realize how they've been used in this political game? Is it a failure of understanding? Is it something historical that predisposes them, or are they just in on it for themselves because they like the welfare state and the security?
It's all a reflection of our failure as men. I
Mm,
want to say that first and foremost.
mm,
And our lack of biblical understanding and biblical knowledge. Look, the Bible spells out women are always going to try to unseat us from our position of authority and dominion that God gave us.
mm.
That is going to be her nature. She will uh, disobey her nature and fall in line if we fall in line. If we, if she looks at us and sees us serving God and obedient to God, she'll fall in line and follow us. If we're completely out of order and not following God, she's going to then say, "Let me take the steering wheel." And so it's our failure.
Mm.
And she right now is in love with her power, and she's ignorant or ignoring the failure of her rulership. And I point to us in the black community. We're dominated by a matriarchal culture. Look at our kids.
Yeah.
Look at how they're performing in schools. Look at the incarceration rate. Look at our death rate. Look at everything. Her rulership is creating a chaos that may get so bad that we can't recover from it. But again, that's on us. We haven't fallen in line. We haven't followed God and that path, and shown her a better path. But she's in love with her power, and a narrative where the media does not hold her accountable for anything, and anything she does is celebrated as the greatest thing on earth. And men have foolishly bought into the myth that the more we empower women in positions of leadership, the better men we are. And because we don't want the responsibility, and we've been hoodwinked, and I said it last week. I gave a speech in Kansas City,
Mm.
actually at the request of the Federal Reserve in Kansas City, Royce. To make, and one of the things I told them, we were talking about college sports and name, image, and likeness, and what impact and what was going on in college sports. And we started talking about how women's college basketball is on the rise, and how I started saying it's going to end up being more popular than men's college basketball. And we're so arrogant. We think that that's no big deal. We think, yeah, it's the women's turn. They got next, and if men's game falls off, no big deal.
Yeah.
We don't protect the things that we've actually built, that build up and uplift men. We think that's unimportant. We think the greatest thing we can do as men is build more girl power and build more women that have rulership over men.
Mm.
And that's why one of the we've been having a discussion and a debate on our show for several months. Hey, what do you think about Elon Musk? What do you think about Elon Musk? Yeah. Hey, I kind of like you. And now we got this female CEO coming to Twitter, and it's the first thing that's made me say, "Oh, here we go, here we go."
I
Because
told you.
right,
I told you. I told you multiple times about your boy Elon. I told you.
I just here we go. I mean, it's so clear as day that we need to be empowering strong men everywhere we can. And this dude's turning around and going to turn it over to a woman. And, there's people, oh, she's a conservative. I'm like, but I did a mono earlier this week, Royce, about like, hey, man, we're at a time in a cultural war where it's time for people to take bullets, that there's going to be some real sacrifice
Yeah.
in this cultural war.
Yeah.
And if you just really understand the nature of women, they don't take bullets. They will do anything to protect their reputation.
Mm.
They will do anything to avoid pain and hurt feelings. And that's why our whole society has gone soft. You start injecting women into every platform, and now men can't even talk the way we used to talk. Oh, that's too rough. And America is a rough place. It needs to be a rough place if it's going to be great. If we sit around every conversation, oh, make sure you don't say anything that hurts anyone's feelings, because women are more sensitive and a bit more controlled by their emotions than men. Uh, and literally, I use this as the example. The Buffalo Bills punter. I don't know if you caught this story. Matt Ariza,
Mm.
drafted out of San Diego State last year, the Buffalo Bills cut him over these rape allegations that have now been totally destroyed, proven as false. They got the woman on tape, having sex with multiple men at this party and enjoying it. They
Wow.
showed the tape to her and her parents, like, hey, we can't press charges. Here's the video evidence. She's saying she's raped. We got the Does she look like she's being raped? Does this look like a woman that's enjoying it and is telling her every time she has sex with a guy at the party, she's bragging to her friends about it? This is all, and so it tells you something about the nature of women in terms of they're not going to take bullets. In order to save her reputation and the embarrassment of, hey, I went to a party and had sex with 5 or 6 random dudes. I'm willing to send people to prison.
Oh,
I'm willing to cost this
oh,
man
wait, wait, wait.
his football career.
Oh, wait, 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 wait. Oh, you're coming right into my wheelhouse. Because if there's one thing I like to talk about more than the corrupt Federal Reserve and global monetary policy, it's the Me Too movement, right? And the liberal white woman and the affectations of the liberal white woman. This is perfect timing because we saw the great performance by Donald Trump at the CNN town hall, which was a total ambush from CNN. And I think her name is Caitlin Collins. There's no better
Yeah.
example of this motif than Caitlin Collins, and even in conjunction with that, Jean Carroll. And if you go back all the way to your Gloria Steinems, who was a CIA sex operative, let's just be clear about that. She was the torchbearer of the modern women's movement that would eventually become Me Too. And even before that, to the very, very inception of one of the biggest cultural wedge issues that I know you're very passionate about, Roe v. Wade. Norma McCorvey herself, the whole buried lead in the Roe v. Wade case was that Norma McCorvey later on would admit that she lied to being raped to try and be able to get an abortion. But not only to try and get an abortion, she actually articulated a distinct political agenda. And she articulated how she was willing to lie to get that political agenda. This is not exclusive to women. Men are just more likely to resort to physical violence to execute their agendas. And you could argue which one is better or worse, but that's for that. I mean, that's neither here nor there, in my opinion. The main point, and I think I wanted to see what you thought about this. The main point for me is that I don't think women are just naturally more sensitive. I think this has gone well beyond the natural inclinations of women. I'm no longer willing to carve them that grace. I'm not willing to carve them that lenience on how this whole feminist movement has taken and hijacked American politics and really the prospect of freedom-based governance all around the world, because it has. Women today, they know full well that a lot of reasonable and logical men believe the narrative that they're more sensitive. Like, it doesn't take a very smart person to listen and jack into the zeitgeist and go, what will people accept? We accept that a certain level of language, like grab them by the pussy, right, is too vulgar for modern American women. But when you look at the data, when you look at what the internet suggests as a whole around the percentage of pornography or the romantic literature that's read, all of these women, many of these women, a huge proportion of these women are now drifting into a BDSM perverted form of casual sexual encounter. I mean, Tinder as an app is all but predicated around casual, transactional, fetish-based sexual interaction. So I'm not buying that Caitlin Collins is this representation that she forwards when she's on stage with Donald Trump. Because I know from personal experience as a 32-year-old man in that sexual marketplace that if you get a Caitlin Collins or anybody in that generation, in my generation or younger, in a private setting, in a private conversation even, it would melt people's face off, the difference between who they present themselves to be and who they actually are. Choke me, spank me, spit on me, pee on me, grab me by the hair, throw me around. I mean, this isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the predominant impulse of the explosion in internet social media, and pornography. So why are men even pretending like we should be cordial? And when, it's like there's the world and then there's the world behind the world. And we want to kind of cater to the world that's being put on as a play and completely or utterly disregard the actual world that we've all experienced. I mean, this is this sort of thin veil of civility that has really stagnated American politics. And the conservatives are really to blame in many ways because they want to keep putting on this thin veil of civility. Don't cuss. Don't talk vulgar. Don't use the word pussy. Oh, Donald Trump said the word pussy. That makes him ineligible. That makes him unelectable to women. Women love that. Women love that. I don't know why. I don't know who we're fooling. Women love that. And he was right when he said it because women do tend to think about sex and romance in a transactional, money-based way because our society is dominated by materialism, radical materialism. So a Donald Trump, a man I'm not even romantically or sexually attracted to, I'll let him do whatever he wants because of the material proposition. But if a hardworking man who I may actually be attracted to but doesn't offer the same type of viable financial and economic lifestyle, then he's the one who has to open the car door and be this perfectly civil gentleman. This is where the entire manosphere and Andrew Tate and Kevin Samuels, this is where they came into prominence because that contradiction is really there. And the sort of religious right or the Christian institutions, they're not even really connected and jacked into that. So they're not ready to properly fight that. That's why a lot of people, a lot of Christian, a lot of 501c3 Christians, Protestant and Catholic, reject Donald Trump on this sort of religious basis, but they're not really out there in the world. But go ahead.
Well, you've raised some things that are going to make me recalculate, but let me further my narrative and have you react to it. Because I talked about this on my show this week. And so, and what I got into was like, just from a biblical perspective of like, why did God send his only begotten son to die on that cross? I think only a man would take that bullet, take that suffering, take that and sacrifice his life. That's in our nature, I believe, in man's nature, that he will sacrifice his life for freedoms, rights, and order. Women, and that's been like why men go off to war for freedom, rights, and order. And we're willing to make that sacrifice. Women will make sacrifices for their kids and that ultimate sacrifice for their children, for what develops inside their womb. That's pretty much it, in my view. And I think there's a reason we're wired that way because the woman's womb is more valuable than the man's penis. You can take one man and many women and birth an entire nation. You can take one woman and many men, and you'll have a homicidal genocide within a few months because men will be so frustrated, we'll just kill each other and it'll be over. You can't, the woman's
Very
womb,
important point. That's profound. Yeah.
a woman's womb is the most valuable organism that God created.
No doubt.
It is homeland, it's the motherland of everything. And so it should be protected. It is, and that's again, that's why we will run off to war and like, man, a bunch of penises just died. That's fine. We can make a bunch more of them, and just all we need is one of them. If one survives, we're good. With women, it's just we need many of them, and so it's in their nature to be very protective of their womb and of what grows inside their womb, and they don't want to leave this earth no matter what because they got to take care of what developed inside of them. And so
so wait, let me ask you, let me try and clarify this from my own understanding. Are you saying, because I said I'm not willing to carve this little, this grace out for him, and I don't say grace like God's grace, it's different, but let me see if I'm let me see if your theory of the case is that women's biology, their nature is the genesis of this sort of narcissism. But it's a necessary, it's an essential narcissism that predisposes them to be the motherly nurturers that they need to be, not only on an individual basis, but on a species wide existential basis. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That look, we don't have
Wow.
a human being that develops inside of us.
Right.
We will never have the connection to our kids that women have. They sit with that baby in them for 9 months or 8 months or however long God blesses them for the baby to stay in the womb. And so it's in their nature to protect what's developed inside of them. They don't want to leave this planet. My mother is 84 years old. She's been dependent upon me for the last 30 years. Really, I mean, like every piece of furniture she sits on, every car she drives, everything is she's dependent upon me. She still thinks I'm completely dependent upon her and that I can't make it in this world without her. She authentically believes that.
Mm.
And that's never going to change. That's how she's wired. She's a woman. I came from her. She take anything that I do in her mind, she never says it, but anything that I do, she's like, I did that. That's her mentality. It's like, man, I did that. That's her mentality. And so women are wired differently. And there is a narcissism that comes along with having this womb and carrying a baby and blah blah blah. And they're going there. And so when it comes to leadership, and this is why we have this leadership crisis, because one, men are ceding power and leadership to women, but then men are also starting to think like women.
Mm.
And so we're less likely to take a bullet. And that's why I'm so excited. Like I'm saying, oh, look at Tucker Carlson. This man just took a bullet.
Yeah.
Look at Elon Musk. He took a bullet. Look at Donald Trump. He's taking. Look at Alex Jones. I'm starting to see men with power and great that have access to all the things that we're supposed to want to have access to, and they're willing to start taking risk and
Mm.
perhaps sacrifice that. That's the nature of man. He will protect freedom, rights, and order. At some point, he'll get so backed into a corner, he's like, man, this is way too chaotic. Even I got to sit around and pretend like this man can get pregnant. I got to sit around and act like I'm good with drag queens coming talking to my kids. I have to sit here and surrender all. Take some poor white guy that came from nothing, that became a millionaire through hard work and do the oh, I got to sit around and pretend like I didn't earn this and that some sort of privilege, blah, blah, blah. And so they're starting to put their foot down and act like men and say, you know what? If my reputation gets destroyed because I'm taking this stance, I'm that's not in a woman's nature.
Mm.
When her reputation gets in trouble, she'll send you to jail. She'll send me to jail. She'll send Matt Ariza to jail. She'll do anything to protect her because that's her nature. She's not built to take bullets, and that's why we all of this female leadership we got, and I'm talking about men and women. Because what you'll see is, oh, just let me kick the can down the road and I hope some other guy fixes it, or I hope it just goes away, but I got to protect what's mine, blah, blah, blah. It's a cowardly leadership. There's all the Buffalo Bills knew that this dude was innocent, but because their leadership is so cowardly and we've built a society so cowardly, they cut the kid and said, we'll smear his reputation. We know he's innocent. We'll smear his reputation, and maybe that'll all go away a year or two from now, and then we'll bring him back. It's cowardly leadership. They did the wrong thing knowing the dude was innocent. Anybody that took a close look at this case and knew the dude was innocent, but we have a cowardly female style of leadership that's in vogue in America. Everything's narcissistic. What's in it for me? Royce, you and I talk about it, and I'm not trying to gloss myself, but you and I have talked about it. It's like I made a big, bold decision. It wasn't about money, and it wasn't about what was best for me. It was like, man, this shit is too crazy. I got to step away from this corporate money so that I can speak on this lunacy that we have going on. Yes, it's going to cost me my reputation. I can't go to socialize the way that I used to. I'm fearful of what woman they're going to send to try to. It's changed my whole life. That's a bullet I'm willing to take, and I did it with my eyes wide open. I knew exactly what was coming to me, but I had to do it. No different than the decisions you made with the NBA.
Yeah.
You knew the bullets that were coming. That's how men are wired when we're operating properly, when we haven't given in to this matriarchal culture.
Yeah, absolutely, and amen that you were willing to take that bullet, and all the people who are standing up now and willing to take those bullets on behalf of the truth and justice and freedom and ultimately God. Amen, amen. God bless you for having that courage. Um, yeah, my fight with the NBA was very similar. I guess as a young black man, you realize when you come up through a community and basketball and sports, professional sports, money, materialism is the idol of the people that you were raised by, denying or fighting against the machine and basically surrendering that type of dream is always going to be looked at with a side eye, right? And I see that even today. I'll see people comment, whether it's on Fearless or whether it's on Twitter or wherever it is on the internet. They'll go, "Isn't this the dude that played 0 games and or had 3 minutes and scored 0 points, or played in 3 games and had 0 points in 3 games?" Because we're addicted to Wikipedia and Google to get our definitions in history now. But yeah, I mean, I knew that would come, but ultimately I was more afraid, and this kind of links in back to our conversation about women. I was more afraid of losing my mind. I was more afraid of losing my mind. I was more afraid of losing my soul. And I had spent enough time watching the NBA and knowing people who were in the NBA behind the scenes, seeing how lifestyles of athletes or the lives of athletes were destroyed through their mental health or their indoctrination to a radical material lifestyle. I had seen that destruction, and I always wondered to myself, growing up in my like teenage years when I started to actually believe I could make it to the NBA. I always wondered, like, what's it like to lose your mind? Do you know? Do you realize it? Is it agony as your sanity leaves you? Right? Like I used to wonder stuff like that. And I realized when I got into the NBA, not that playing in the NBA would most certainly make me lose my mind, but the position I was in, the mental health battle I had already fought or was fighting at the time, my knowledge of politics and the greater forces at work, and the way that the establishment expects you to shut your mouth on the most important things would have been a shame too much for me to carry. And so I understand that women don't want to take the arrows, but do you think it's by accident? Do you think it's a coincidence, or uh, uh, do you think it's correlated to the level of mental illness and mental health struggles we see in our women population? I think it's a disproportionate amount of women who are on psychiatric medication. And so does this narcissism, does this rejection of the natural order predispose them to organic illness, is what I'm asking.
Without question. Anytime you start going against nature, and the world is telling you the more you're like a man, the happier you'll be.
Mm.
And you start trying to apply that to your life, you're gonna go crazy. Royce, if you wake up tomorrow and say, you know what, I'm gonna try to be the best woman I can be, you'll be nuts in less than 24 hours. And so you got women running around again who their whole wiring, they know how valuable their womb is, and now they're running around trying to let me screw and suck as many different things as they possibly can. This is completely against their nature.
Yeah.
The Gloria Steinem, all the atheists and secularist people are oh no, this is what you want to do. This is what happiness is. Banging as many people. The more you're like a man, the happier you'll be. So go out and bang as many people as possible, suck as many different penises as possible. You'll be happy. They're not happy. They're nuts, and they're miserable, and they're ashamed of themselves. And I know there'll be someone in the white. I'm not ashamed, and I'm blah blah blah. And Whitlock don't know what he's
Yeah.
talking about.
Okay. Yeah.
The stats are overwhelming,
Yeah.
and the money that big pharma's making pumping anxiety pills into you, overwhelming, all because you're running around trying to be a man and trying to go against your nature. And so it's all connected. And the thing is now with the way, and they've known this for a good 60, 70, 80 years. But now with technology and the way to track people, it's like all of their instincts and all of their research is confirmed in terms of if we can feminize America, feminize uh, American society, American men, turn the country over to the LGBTQ, all of these people that they're natural, the men that go that alphabet mafia route, and as the culture bends to that alpha mafia, alphabet mafia route, as as it, everybody becomes more vulnerable and easier to leverage,
Mm.
easier to bribe and pay off and to give into a deal as because when you're actually a real man and I know I don't have to worry about your audience. I'm saying this for the benefit of the outsiders that will uh, watch this, but take Donald Trump, and I know that's the fingernails on the chalkboard for these outsiders. Look at the financial sacrifice he's made by running for president, being president, and continuing this fight.
Mm.
That and Donald Trump is very flawed, and I'm not calling him a perfect person or whatever. But this is really manly behavior. I'm willing to sacrifice all of this financial wealth. I'm willing to have. Donald Trump was before running for president, before getting involved in politics, was well liked. He could go to any party he wanted. He could get virtually any woman he wanted. He popular television show.
Yep.
He sacrificed it all to that's manly behavior. And again, the things you're doing, I'm attempting to do, this is like manly behavior, the sacrifice, not giving in to radical materialism, is a manly behavior. You know why people are radical materialists and prioritize getting the bag? Again, basically what they're saying is getting a purse. I got to get my purse. That again, it's a woman thing. She
Disgusting.
wants to
It's
be
disgusting.
provided for.
Yeah.
She wants to be. She doesn't trust her own. Like a real man, if we took all the technology away and went back to the 1800s, real man, give me my gun and enough bullets, and I'm gonna go out here and fend for myself.
Yeah.
I can make it just me. Now, get the bag, get the purse, make sure I'm completely comfortable and provided for, and I never have to do anything else again. That's a woman's mentality that we all have. And that's what everybody, when I hear people talk about getting the bag, I just, you don't even know how feminized you sound, how feminized you are. You're chasing a purse, man. Get you some high heels while you're at it. Somebody give that dude some red bottoms that match that purse he's chasing. Cause that's all. You're just saying you a hoe.
Oh, I saw.
Period.
The perfect paragon of this is I saw a video go viral the other day because I'm jacked into Instagram and Twitter. I don't follow anybody because I really don't believe in it. But ultimately, I don't want my timeline filled up with a bunch of people's nonsense. It'd be disappointing to me in most cases, especially close relatives and friends. But regardless, I still go to the search algorithm just to see what the machine is spitting out at people, just to take a diagnosis of what's most viewed, because I think that's a great indicator, or definitely what's most liked. Although we could argue about how much of it is fake and organic, and how much is bot driven or whatever. But I saw a video go viral of a young man in the hood, in the neighborhood, on the corner. And he was outside of a corner store, and he had those rubber red shoes on. I don't know if you're familiar with this new rubber red shoe phenomenon. It's like the shoes that they used to wear in the cartoons, and they just made them into
Yes.
their real life shoes. Yeah. And man, he had the designer jeans on and the t-shirt and the belt with the extravagant belt buckle, and he had the red rubber shoes on, and he was like, man, you don't know nothing about these, like, this whole trendy in style, like, and don't get me wrong, there's having taste, there's having style. I'm fairly well dressed. I like to dress. I love menswear. I like suits. All my suit pants have suspender buttons in them, so I like suspenders. But there's being put together. There's being having yourself in order, and the way that you present yourself as a reflection of the order in your mind and in your spirit. And then there's just being a brand whore, right? And a lot of these men have openly and exaltingly turned into brand whores, right? And I don't even know what we do with these people, but I do know that a lot of them, like a lot of your male counterparts in the sports broadcasting world, a lot of them are very guilty of this, whether it's Shannon Sharp or Stephen A or any of these guys. If you take a look at their life outside, Steve Harvey, he's another one, although Steve's dress is okay, I'm not saying, but their whole worldview is predicated around money. And the black man's worldview is now predicated around money. And the black man's worldview is kind of predicated around, let's try and out white people. And I wanted to let's turn this light off. My light's flickering on and off today. Perils of having a startup podcast. I want to throw this thing against the wall. Anyway, um, the perils of becoming a radical materialist culture, right? And I want to go back to the beginning if we can, and again dive deeper into race, because I've started to have an intellectual advancement around this issue. When we talk about race and racism and the history of racism, the conservatives reject it. We reject it outright because it's been used as a blunt force object in every political conversation to confuse the conversation, to hijack the conversation. But it's also been used historically to lay the blueprint for this entire global agenda. And I've been on the record saying that many times. The predicate for globalism culturally was World War II, the Holocaust, the civil rights movement, the women's rights movement, the LGBTQ movement, and now the culmination of uniparty politics that must bend to an electorate, right? An electorate that gives you a consensus on power and ultimately righteousness. Um, so the conservatives, we reject racism outright. But when you really start to go back and look at the history of racism, I think the number one issue, and I'd love to know what you think about this idea, the number one issue is that we're confusing racism with scientism. We call it racism, but really it's a byproduct of scientific heresy. And I told you before on the show, I've said this on this show, the four heresies of the West were the scientific method, democracy, computer technology, and now artificial intelligence. But that scientific method, that Darwinism, that became social Darwinism, that became race theory, this was a heresy that had its legs well before slavery. But it was codified in an intellectual tradition of academic Europe, and specifically Cambridge, the Crown, Sir Galton, right, Darwin. These people came from the same exact intellectual tradition at the same time. And they took Darwin and they took the scientific method and they created a lie about race. That's why I try and caution conservatives not to shy away from talking about race. We need to understand that race was actually a lie to begin with. It was a myth to begin with. And on the right, somewhere out there in the religious right, we accept this sort of this racial framework of the world, and we do on the left as well. So I like what you've been trying to advocate is, hey, look, this whole race thing is out of hand and it's become racial idolatry. But my caution is, do we understand where this whole deal came from? Do we understand what's at work?
I think, Royce, and I'm not all the way here, but this is where I lean. and I've been leaning this way for 5, 7 years. I don't know how long, but like the race thing is just unfairness. That's all it is. It's just unfairness. And unfair, the world is unfair. And that was spelled out very early in the Bible, that sin and unfairness were brought into the world. And so, what I've tried to do with my own life is when bad things happened to me when I was younger, I'd be like, I'd take everything personal and say, oh, this person's clearly just got a problem with me. And then as I would do more research and or later find out, like, oh man, the boss that I had that was treated me poorly, oh man, that boss treated 10, 15 other people poorly as well. It wasn't personal. That person just behaved poorly with other human beings. It wasn't just you. And I found that out repeatedly.
Yeah.
And so the world is unfair to everyone. And 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 people, we are so caught up in like, oh man, our unfairness, it's all because of my skin color.
Yeah.
And it's I don't think that's true.
Yeah.
And we'll sit there, and I mean, this is like a very transparent, easily to be misunderstood position, but it's just facts.
Okay.
You may move into someone's neighborhood and they may look at you crossways, and and they may not engage with you, but it may not have anything to do with your skin color. It's like, do you and or your kids, when they moved into the neighborhood, do you play rap music loud and throughout the music with all this cussing and everything, and someone sitting there like, I got kids, and you driving through here with someone shouting and screaming MF this and MF that, maybe that's what they don't like. Now, you will interpret that as racism. Or you may, what if you move into someone's neighborhood and you're a single mother with 3 kids and no father around, and someone in that neighborhood is like, man, me and my wife, and we supervise our kids, and we know the statistics on if there's no father in the home, it's 7 times more likely that there will be some type of sexual abuse going on in that home through a babysitter, an uncle, a cousin, or whoever, blah blah blah. And it's just like, man, I don't want a single mama in my neighborhood. You may interpret that as racism, where it might just be, does your behavior line up with the values of the people that are already in that neighborhood? And so, as Black people, if I don't know what, it's like 70, 80% of us don't get married, and 70, 80% of white folks do get married,
Mm.
and they sit around and say, man, I don't want no single families in my neighborhood. That's not consistent with our values and how we try to operate this neighborhood. Is that racism, or is that just people that, because when I go to a party, I want to hear R&B music, and I want to hear Jodeci, and I want to hear the Isley Brothers. If I go to a party and they playing U2, it's not as fun for me. And does that make me racist, or does that make me like, there's a style of music I like? And so there's, most people that I have engaged with, that they either like my values and how I carry myself, or they don't. It generally, most people, it has nothing to do with skin color. The, you know, when these alleged racist white people hear me say and back up, like, no, I really love this country and I'm really appreciative of this country. That's some common ground we have. But if you move into somebody's neighborhood and you like, man, this country's a piece of dog doodle and it's treated me unfairly, it's like, man, I don't want to be around that.
Well,
And
I'll
so,
give you, I'll give you to back up what you're saying completely from a younger generation standpoint. Um, and don't get me wrong. I do think there's genuine racism, and ultimately, I think the racism that people the racism that people have an intuition about today when they talk about systemic racism is a racism of academic, political, financial elites that have baked in a lot of genuine social Darwinism and social engineering that they can't really identify and don't really understand. So they just have a natural resent towards it and they don't know how to articulate it, right? That's it. So it comes out when a white cop shoots a black man, it's the most visceral, tragic thing we can see. They go, oh, that's it. That's the thing right there. It's like, no, the thing was taking you to a fiat currency and taking the smaller subsect of the population of the working class that had already come from slavery and ensuring that you would never actually have independence through an economic Ponzi scheme to make you a wage slave, right? That's some real high level stuff. And it was for everybody. It wasn't just for black people. It's just that black people had a unique history and it was a continuation of a system that was piloted against us. Actually, when I see the plans laid out by the Klaus Schwabs of the world on how they want to use the fourth industrial revolution to tell everybody they're going to own nothing and be happy, I see that as racism. I identify that as a pilot of slavery that was run on black people first, that now they want to expand to everybody, regardless of race. But I will, again, to back up what you were just saying. If I see, I'm a black man. If I see a group of young black men in a neighborhood, in a certain type of, I come from the neighborhood. So it's really hard for two black men who come from the neighborhood. And this is why the liberals don't want us on television, mainstream television. This is why they don't want us to have a platform. Because when you really come from the neighborhood, when you really come from the streets and you can talk about it from firsthand experience, it kind of dilutes all of the bullshit WWE politics. It's like, no, when I'm in a certain neighborhood at a certain time of day and I see a certain group of people, I understand how I got to carry myself to try and survive, right? To be cautious about the prospect of danger as a man, where I live, where my family lives. There's bullets flying through innocent people's homes all the time on the north side of Minneapolis. That's the reality. There are no stray bullets hitting no kids in their home in Eden Prairie. There are no stray bullets hitting their kids in their homes in New Prague. Now, you may have a wife who cheats on a husband and he comes home and gets a shotgun and kills her and the kids. That happens. But nowhere near as frequently as young people, young black children become a victim of stray bullets. So if we acknowledge that, which we do in our own community, but then a white person goes, these black communities are dangerous as hell. Now they're racist? I mean, well, come on. We got to stop lying to ourselves. I mean, come on. I don't care if you're black, white, brown, green, orange, or translucent. Doesn't matter what your color is. Anybody could walk into Chicago on the south side of Chicago at night and listen to the gunshots ring off and look around and go, man, it's a lot of black people over here shooting each other. So, and I think to go back to the beginning and your point about Farrakhan and one of the most important messages that Farrakhan ministered is before, in the Nation of Islam as a whole, before we talk about what the white man has done, we have to have ourselves in order. That's why they wore the suits and the bow tie. It was a symbol of them taking themselves more seriously in society. And so it bothers me when Farrakhan gets misrepresented for these small sound bites and conservatives chew on them and they use that to characterize Farrakhan in totality when really the conservatives and Farrakhan are in accordance about what's wrong with the black community. They're in complete accord. In fact, the entire Nation of Islam's motif is that they're conservative. The gang, the conservative vice lords who had that Nation of Islam influence there in Chicago, the reason why they have conservative at the front of vice lord is because they believe in a more conservative worldview, even though they're gang members, right? So, and you see that across some of these black gangs of history that they didn't believe in any of this woke nonsense. In fact, in the prisons and gangs, there's certain black gangs, you couldn't even be homosexual. You get killed or you get out, you get kicked out of the gang or get what they call a violation in the streets. You get violations for being involved in homosexual activity. So when that starts to become clear to you, how do you square the conservatives having such a huge cultural wedge with the religious right of extreme black leaders like a Farrakhan? And I'll tell you why I asked that question. I'll just put my opinion out there. Yeah, racism isn't the problem it's made out to be. But as a up and coming politician in the Republican Party, I can tell you from experience, the reason why the Republicans are losing, not only in the results of the election, whether they're legitimate or not, fraud aside, and I do think there's a lot of corruption in our elections. But that aside, the reason why the spirit of the elections is lost is because these old guard Republicans do not want black people in the Republican Party. And I'm not saying they don't want black gang members or crackheads or drug dealers in the Republican Party. They don't want conservative black people in the Republican Party. Like I've experienced it here in Minnesota, which is supposed to be this progressive racial, this racial conforming, accepting place, even in conservative politics. In fact, I just sat in a congressional district convention in CD3 where Minnetonka and Wayzata and all these little western metro suburbs sit. And I heard the chair of the Minnesota GOP go up before the entire delegate body that was completely white, mind you. He went up before the delegate body and said, we have to start to change these deep blue districts. Guess who they brought to speak at the CD3 town hall a month ago? Liz Collins. Now, I don't care where you fall on George Floyd, but even from a strategic standpoint, if you're saying you need another 300,000 votes in a deep blue district, whether it be CD5, which is Minneapolis and St. Paul, right, metropolitan, or whether it's New York City, or whether it's Ohio and Cleveland, wherever it is across the country, why would you attach yourself to a wedge issue that's so racially driven? And this is where I've told you over the last year, yeah, the racism for your everyday average working class American isn't what CNN and MSNBC wants to make it. But in the power structure, even in the Republican Party, these people genuinely represent the outer bastion of New World Order by trying to keep black people out of the party. They don't want the party to change because they don't want the party to win because they're taking money from the party losing. This is what Steve Bannon and Donald Trump, this is what Donald Trump and Steve Bannon uncovered, which is why they go out of their way to make Donald Trump look like your old George Bush Republicans when every single liberal in this country knows very well that Donald Trump came into politics fighting these people for this very reason, because they've been paid to lose.
Unpack for me who Liz Collins is. I'm not from Minnesota.
Liz Collins is the wife of former police union president Bob Kroll, who was also a Minneapolis cop. Okay, and Bob Kroll has been under, look, I don't know Bob Kroll personally. I know stories from guys in the neighborhood and in the streets. There's a whole world that first of all, people got to understand when they talk about police in the police state, there's a whole world that goes on behind the scenes with police. Police in many cities function like a big gang. And we know this. They're involved in drugs. They're involved in arms dealing. They're involved in payoffs with different gang members. And in the southern, southwestern part of the country, I'm pretty sure they're probably involved with the cartels. But anyway, Bob Kroll runs a motorcycle gang in town, and it's an all-white motorcycle gang. And he, when the George Floyd thing popped off, he took a lot of heat because the unions took a lot of heat. Now, the unions didn't take heat because people said he was a racist, or because the unions take heat because the unions protect the police. They protect the citizens and the police departments from being able to fire bad cops, whether they're white, black, Mexican, Chinese, doesn't matter. The unions have protected bad police, regardless of race. So he took a lot of heat. Well, his wife took a lot of heat because she was on television or on the radio here in town. And now she's going around saying that the whole George Floyd thing was a hoax. That the whole thing was a hoax, right? That the whole thing was either planned or there was more to the story and George Floyd didn't really die from this or that. And I'm not saying that any of that isn't true. What I'm asking is, why would a Republican Party that believes they need to shift the brand of the party in inner cities, why would they spend time on a Liz Collins and not spend more time on inner city outreach? Why are they not taking their Bibles and their conservative worldview, which is a better pitch about American citizenship? Why are they not going into Minneapolis and pitching to the black people whose vote they need, who they actually have a winning argument towards? No, we don't want you to stay on welfare. We don't want you to be a ward of the state. We want you to own property. We want you to own a gun. I'll tell you why. Because they actually don't want black people to own guns or property. Because truth be told, they don't really want white people to own guns or property. But they surely don't want black people first, because the black people would change the fundamental structure of our electorate. And we all have to become wise to this, black, white, or indifferent in this country. The racism issue has to be talked about and sorted out so we can understand how our electorate has been hijacked psychologically, informationally, and otherwise.
My position, Royce, is that the spiritual fall and moral decay has to be talked about first.
Okay.
That the whole thing I'm doing and what I believe in is like, you're not going to fix unfairness, aka racism, until the spiritual aspect is addressed.
Yeah.
And so
you can't fix politics with politics. You got to fix politics with God.
Yes, you got to fix the heart. We got a heart condition, and there's, again, I'm saying things that are very easily misunderstood. But when you go and look at a group of people that say commercial hip hop is their culture, that's black culture. When I hear us doing that, and I used to be someone that somewhat fell into that, although I've always been a critic of hip hop and commercial hip hop in particular. But when you have a group of people that are comfortable being defined by that, because this is a thought that goes through my mind. It's like, are we possessed? Are we demons?
Yeah.
This music that we're claiming this is our culture, and Jay-Z and Meek Mill and T.I. and Lil Wayne, all these are important cultural figures to us. It makes me question, like, are we possessed? And if I'm thinking that, and I grew up with the music, and I'm friends with many rappers, if I think the average white person looking at that, and the conversations I would imagine they have amongst themselves, like, man, they sing songs and dance to nigga, 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 and their women are twerking, and at every party they're rubbing their booties on these dudes' penises, and that's how they did. I'm like, and then when I think about myself trying to go to those communities, if I'm a white person,
yeah,
and I'm going to go engage and talk with these people, and it seems so high risk to them, like anything that I say could be construed as racist. And the next thing you know, I'm in some headlines about, well, I said X, Y, and Z, and you're a racist. And there's like, that's way too high risk. And so I'm not justifying their fear, but I am justifying their fear because we all have the same fear.
But
That's
don't
why
you?
there's
But with that being said, don't you think, like in the final analysis, from a Christian standpoint, don't you think that there are people who are demonically possessed? There are people who have fallen and strayed from the path of God. There are people in the inner cities. There are people all around the world that are actually just waiting for us to muster up the courage to go and minister the gospel of Jesus Christ to them. Isn't that what we have to? I mean, if we're going to say that politics, that the spiritual is upstream from the culture and the culture is upstream from politics, which I agree with fundamentally, wholeheartedly, isn't it essential then that we bring the ministry to the people who need it? Because we know the demonic is going to spread. For example, I just saw they put into legislation that they're now offering Satan Club at after-school programs. and they're dressing little kids up in satanic temple regalia. Okay, so we're totally off the reservation. There is no more Christianity in schools whatsoever, other than the fundamental sort of rubric of ethics that prevail. Other than that, we're completely satanic. So what do we? How do we get the country back or save any of it if we don't go into the places that are the most dangerous?
Okay, and we should, and they should. But the typical white evangelical feels like he's persona non grata at black churches.
Yeah,
That would be his entryway into the black community. These churches are located in these inner cities, and a white evangelical isn't welcome.
true.
And so they're like, I don't even, and then they go, well, hey, Royce, Whitlock, could you escort me in? And
Shit, we're not welcome.
that's where I'm going, because I want to be careful, because I
No,
don't
tell
know
it like
who.
it is. Tell it like it is.
No, but I got to be careful because it's personal, and the church that I grew up in, that I was the number one financial supporter of. They brought some smoke to me 4 or 5 years ago that let me know, like, okay, appreciate all the cash, Whitlock, but it's like,
Bigger than money, huh?
if, yeah, if they will do me like that, and they're relying on it, there would be no roof on the church without me. They'll do me a white evangelical. They're preaching so much racial idolatry inside these churches that again, the white evangelical does what? How do I get in? Royce and Whitlock can't escort me in. They're hated maybe even more than we are,
Yeah.
and
No,
so
no doubt.
it's it's. I'm not.
What about this idea? What about this idea? I mean, we're just brainstorming right here because
Yeah,
this is ultimately what has to be discussed and figured out for us to win this game. This is what Steve and Donald Trump and all of these people who really believe in the country are trying to figure out now. We see the racial divide. We see the scam that's being run, pit black against white to make off with the green. But the question is, how do we solve it? How do we get back engaged when this narrative has got such a running start ahead of us? What do you think about this idea? If we went back to base, and we talked about this briefly the other day, if we went back to basic Christian and Catholic charity, if we went back to what is the Democrats' real pitch? The Democrats' real pitch is anything goes on top of a welfare security, right? They're going to give you the basic needs, they're going to give you the basic goods, and they're going to use that as the calling card of their humanitarianism, right? Their humanitarianism and their social welfare, right? That's their whole pitch. And they use that as the gateway to get in with young single moms or kids that don't have somewhere to go after school. I went to an after school program that was funded by state and federal money, probably at the YAP, which is the Youth Achievement Program at the YWCA in the neighborhood, and a bunch of black kids went there. And I mean, this is where they're gonna now bring the Satan Club, right? Although I think the Y may have been a Christian organization in the beginning, or one of those. I don't know if it's the Boys and Girls Club, but one of them was more of a Christian organization. But that doesn't even matter now because your Christians are going woke too. So what about the America First movement re-engaging with black communities through genuine charity? I mean, real, genuine charity that's tied to teaching these young people what their citizenship could really be.
I I think that, but man, they got things so rigged up in terms of they put so much money on the street, so much dope out in the hood
Yeah, you ain't
that,
lying. You ain't
and
lying.
what I mean by that is like charity, the whole Democratic platform, basically what you're describing, is a charity. We'll give you a cell phone. We'll send you a stimulus check. We'll send you a welfare check. We will give your overweight single mama a political job. And and we will uh and literally I'm gonna just tell you the other thing. We will throw a party. We'll have the best weed there. We'll have plenty of Hennessy. We'll have your favorite rapper.
Hmm.
It's more fun over here with us guys.
Yeah.
If you go party with them, you're gonna have to listen to George Strait. They're gonna serve Jack Daniels and not Hennessy. Literally, and it won't. You can do anything, and we'll pretend like you'll take some ecstasy, and you'll wake up, and the next day you can say it never happened, and we'll go along with that lie. Now we'll have everything on tape, so that if you ever do become a problem for you, we'll be able to leverage you. But but they got the whole thing wired up, and so Roy, the only solution is it's a long term, just biblical approach, and I hate to sound self serving, but it's this is what this whole fearless thing is about. It's about these conversations and converting people one at a time, listening to me and you talk about these issues and opening people's minds to, like, hey, are you sure what you're doing is biblically sound? It's having that spiritual conversation out in public, and asking people. Now go compare the conversation Jason and Royce just had to the conversation Michael Eric Dyson and Al Sharpton have.
Mm.
And they're not going to mention God very often, even though Al Sharpton pretends to be a minister. Uh, Everything's going to be political and built around some kind of grievance of you as a victim. And if you listen to Whitlock and Royce, they're like, no, no, we're Christians. We're not victims. We're victors. There's no honor in being a victim. Men certainly are not victims. It's a long, and so what I would sound very self-serving, but I think it's part of the message that you are sounding and saying as well. But the for the Republicans or for white evangelicals, they should be pouring support into making sure that conversations like you and I are having are getting in front of as many black people as possible.
Yeah.
And making it crystal clear, hey, we're not interfering. That's Royce and Jason. That's their, because it really is. There's no one paying me and you to have this conversation. These are our authentic thoughts. And so I think their best play is just trying to platform and promote people like yourself, people like me, people like Virgil and John Amachukua, that some of these, and opening people's minds to, hey, perhaps what you're doing is just not biblically sound, and it's a. I've had to have these conversations over many years with my family, and I'm starting to see some results. Is
Mm.
because what's going on with Joe Biden is so outrageous. What's going on with the abortion movement? What's going on with drag queens and all of that other stuff is so outrageous and so in their face. It's very hard for them not to acknowledge that, like, man, this maybe Whitlock's right. Maybe this is demonic, because it certainly looks and smells and feels that way. Anytime you're fighting to sexualize kids,
Yeah.
it what other description could it be other than demonic? And so I don't. What I'm doing right now is what I think the solution is. I love these conversations, and uh, you know, helping me refine and think about other solutions. But, I think white evangelicals, black evangelicals, we're in a tough spot.
Yeah, no
They
doubt.
have rigged up this game masterfully.
Yeah.
And so I go back to, the gospel, that scripture, the words in the Bible. It's the most powerful tool we have, and we just got to put it in people's face over and over and over again until they get it.
Final question here before you leave. You were good friends with Tucker. You spent a lot of time on Tucker's show, and the entire concern. There was, the Tucker being ousted there at Fox sent shockwaves through the entire conservative movement, especially when it comes to social media and online. I'm sure some of the geriatrics that were watching Fox are going on with business as usual, and they may even believe that another Me Too claim, right? Another Me Too claim was waged against Tucker. I mean, you see all across the board any voice that wants to promote American citizenship and freedom and Judeo-Christian values is being attacked the same way through these sort of neoliberal Me Too allegations in some form or fashion. Talk about Tucker and your relationship with him just a little bit and what his leaving Fox meant for you. I know that you said, you had been going on Fox frequently and now you're all but done with Fox because Tucker was canned. So just talk a little bit about Tucker and your view on him and what that whole deal has meant for you now going forward and Fearless too.
Well, for me, as it relates to Fox, it's just an indication that that's not a real platform for truth, and it's I just don't have an interest in going on the network and wasting my time because it's just not a platform for truth. I think cutting bait with Tucker, the way, popular, powerful, a voice for working class Americans. Uh, no matter how much money I've made or ever have, I'm always going to come from that working class perspective. And Tucker was our voice, even though he comes from a very elite background. He was our voice, and then as I watched him grow spiritually and start leaning into a discussion that centered a biblical worldview, I thought it was awesome. And so when they cut bait with him, I was like, well, whew, they got no interest in God. That they want to pretend that they do, and so I'm just not going to lend my voice to that game that they're playing. And so I haven't turned on Fox News since he left. It's not out of some kind of hurt feelings. Tucker Carlson will be fine. He's made a lot of money. He comes from a wealthy family. He's going to start a different project and he'll be perfectly fine. It's just, I'm not going to play along in their game. I'd rather go on MSNBC and argue with their idiots and rather than go on Fox News and pretend like me and those guys are on the same team. We're not.
Amen.
Uh, and so I'd rather go argue with my declared enemies than playing a game with Fox News. But I think Tucker's going to be perfectly fine. I think that this, I agree with Alex Jones, your buddy Alex Jones, that Tucker's removal from Fox News is the last straw for cable news. Cable news will never be as important as it once was.
Mm.
It's over from CNN and Bernard Shaw when they were dominant to Roger Ailes and Bill O'Reilly to Tucker Carlson. Cable news is now a joke. I think most people see it for what it is, and so this was kind of like the final nail in the coffin that there's nothing here to be taken seriously, and everybody now knows if you want anything resembling the truth, you're going to have to do a little extra work and find it on the internet, and you're going to have to fight through the algorithms because they're going to shadow ban and make it harder for you to find the truth, but it's out there and it can be found. There's a handful of people out there doing shows like this where you can find the truth. And so I think just alternative news outlets I think that, I'm hoping that Twitter remains an asset. Again, I got some suspicions about who Elon Musk has just named as the CEO, but
Yeah.
Tucker's going to air his show there, and so I no longer New York Times, Washington Post, CNN. And I don't look for news on any of those outlets, any news, any truth that I can trust. There's Tucker Carlson, there's Joe Rogan podcast, there's your podcast that's growing and developing. There's obviously a bunch of shows on the Blaze. Uh, that's where you need to go look for truth, and that's the new normal moving forward.
Well, we appreciate your time, Jason, and we appreciate Fearless. We appreciate the entire Fearless audience and the entire Fearless team. Thank you again for joining us on Please Call Me Crazy. Keep fighting, man. For real, you're one of the leading voices, tip of the spear.
Oh, I forgot to, yeah. War Room and Steve Bannon. You gotta.
Steve, yeah, Steve's
That's
great.
yeah.
The War Room Posse, the War Room Posse. Yeah, I can't wait to see you. We got to get. You know what I want to do? I'm putting this out there in the universe. Hopefully, we can get this done. I would love to get me, you, Tucker, Alex, and Steve Bannon all in one room at one table, round table, and just go at it for about 3 hours and just hash some stuff out. I think that'd be epic and legendary. We'll see if everybody's schedule can fit that in. It'd probably be somewhere down there in Texas during one of the big conservative events or summits or something like that. We'll have to run that gamut. But I appreciate you, brother. I appreciate the entire Fearless audience and army. Don't wait too long till next time. We miss you when you're not on Please Call Me Crazy.
Royce, we should probably be doing this once a week, to be honest with you, but that's your call. All right.
The fight continues, brother. Godspeed.
Thank you.